What's up, guys? In this video, I'm going to listen to a cold call recording that was sent to me by one of my coaching clients who he wanted some feedback on his virtual assistants and how they were making their calls and just kind of my general feedback. So I'm going to break down that call live. I haven't heard this call yet, so you're going to actually get my raw opinion, raw take on it. So yeah, let's dive into it.
Hello?
Hi, Patrick.
Yes.
Hey, how are you? This is Cheryl. I'm reaching out about your home here on 5505 16th Ave. I just wanted to see if you would consider an offer in your property there.
What kind of offer?
Okay, so first, real quick, just because I believe that the opening part of the script is like the most important. I always tell people that you have 5 seconds to buy the next 45 seconds or the next 30 seconds or whatever it is, right? My point is you have to come off on a good first foot, or else you're probably going to get hung up on, right? And even if you don't get hung up on, that seller is going to throw up walls, and it's going to be harder to break them down and actually have a real conversation. So the first thing that what we always tell our callers is, hey, identify who you are as quickly as possible and why you're calling so that you're not wasting time, right? Because some callers, she did a really good job of saying like, hey, this is, I was calling you about your property on XYZ Street, and I was curious if you had any interest in selling the property there. Right? Some people will say, hey, this is Nick. I was looking for Bob. And then Bob will say yes. And then you're like, hey, thanks, Bob. Like, I was actually calling you about your property that I believe you own on 123 Main Street. And then they stop, right? And then Bob will be like, yeah, what about it, right? So I like that she just went right into it and said, hey, I'm calling about your property I believe you own on Main Street. I was curious if you would consider an offer on it. One thing that I will say is I don't like that she used the full address. I always tell my team to just use the street name only, and also only use the seller's first name, which I'm pretty sure she did, but she used the full property address, which makes it sound like a cold call, right? If you think about being the homeowner who's, again, getting cold called by probably a bunch of people, and they're getting caught in the middle of their day, they're doing other stuff, right? They're not on the phones all day like we are probably, unless they're in sales. But she used the full address, which makes it sound a little bit more like a cold call, like you are being called from a call center and they're just reading off the screen, right? So you almost want to come across like you are a neighbor, right? Like, hey, I was calling about the property I believe you own over on Main Street. I was curious if you had any interest in selling, right? Rather than saying like, hey, I was calling you about a property I believe you own on 123 Main Street in Tampa, Florida, right? It just sounds more casual, sounds a little bit more friendly neighbor rather than cold caller. So let's keep going.
That's a good question. Would love to make an offer. I just need to ask a few questions about the house and what the condition looks like. If you are looking to sell.
I'm not really looking to sell, but I would consider it a market offer. I'm not sure to wholesale my house. But,
I see. I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can match your numbers. I just need to ask just a few basic information. Would that be okay?
All right.
All right. Thanks.
So the guy immediately said, like, I'm really not that interested in selling. I'm just kind of curious on, what somebody would pay if I did decide to sell. So he's probably not going to be a lead, but just for the purpose of this video, let's keep listening to see how she handles the flow of the conversation, and I'll give my feedback on that.
Are there any updates you've made so far, like in the last 5 years or so?
Yes. The house is currently divided into 3 separate units, and there's like we completely upgraded the middle section, which has we have a brand new kitchen, bathroom, and flooring, and a what do you call it, mini split cooling system. So that's been completely redone. Then the bathroom in the main part of the house has been completely redone. Shower, vanity.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Got it. Thank you. And any updates needed for the property?
Needed? I mean, not really. No.
Okay. How's the roof? Do you know how old the roof is?
Mm, it's just 10 years old.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And it's I'm assuming it's not listed in the market with a realtor.
Correct.
Okay, so she's getting into the first pillar of qualification. Remember, the first or the four pillars of qualification are the condition of the property, the motivation to sell the property, their timeline to sell the property, and their asking price, right? So she's getting into the condition of the property right now. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I say the four pillars of qualification, go check out. I'll link the video below for the four pillars of qualification. That's super important. So go check that out if you're not familiar. But she's working into the four pillars of qualification, and she's starting with the condition of the property. And one thing that I will say is we always want to ask open-ended questions, right? If you notice, she said, like, has the property been updated? And another question was, the other question I think was, does the property need any updating? A way that I would ask that is, instead of saying, has the property been updated in the last 5 to 10 years, I would say, what updates have you done in the last 5 to 10 years? And instead of asking, does the property need updating, say, what would I have to update in this property before I could move somebody into it, or something like that, right? Just open-ended questions. If you ask yes or no questions, you're going to get yes or no answers. Mostly, he actually kind of volunteered some information, but a lot of sellers, if you ask them yes or no questions, you'll get yes or no answers. So you want to ask them open-ended questions, right? Like I said, instead of asking if the property's been updated, say, what updates have you done to the property? But yeah, so let's keep going.
Okay. Thank you. And you live there, or you have tenants?
Uh,
Each unit
yeah,
tenants.
tenants, correct. And we're
Okay.
currently,
And how many bed?
yeah, how many bedrooms? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bedrooms. 5 bedrooms, 3 baths.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I was just curious though. We're just curious why you have thought about selling the property, besides getting the right offer. Are you looking for bigger rental properties?
No, I have 2 different rental properties in Gulfport, and they're both in Gulfport, and I want to diversify. So it's not listed, but I'm thinking in a year or so, or 2 years, I may sell. But not now. I mean, I'm getting $5,000 a month in rental income, so it's profitable for me, and so I'm not in a rush to sell, but for the right offer, I consider it.
Got it. Thank you. Do you have like a price in mind on how much you would like to get for the property if you sold the home at?
So before we get into asking price, couple of things here, and you can tell she was getting into the next pillar of qualification, which is the motivation. And we kind of got timeline too. And it doesn't sound like he's going to be very motivated, right? He said that he's looking to diversify his rentals. He's already got a rental in the area, and he wants to diversify his assets a little bit, which is probably not going to be motivation enough to accept a cash offer. I mean, the guy already said he's not really interested in selling. But for the purpose of this video, I do like how she transitioned from the condition into, well, hey, so other than, getting an offer that makes sense, what else, what is making you think of selling the property? And he's not interested, but that's a good question, because you're going to be able to pull the motivation and potentially the timeline, which she did, out of the lead. Unfortunately, this guy doesn't really have much motivation, and his timeline is pretty far out. But I like that she asked those questions. And another thing that I want to say is she's doing really, really well at active listening. I really like that she's actively listening to this homeowner, because a lot of people, when they're cold calling, it's just question, silence, right? And then the next question, especially with virtual assistants. So what happens if that's the case is you have the homeowner thinking that they're like being interrogated rather than they're having a conversation with somebody, right? If you just say, all right, what kind of shape is the property in? And then they don't say anything, or I'm sorry, they're not saying like, yep, oh, okay, like, active listening, and it's just silence on the other end of the phone, then that homeowner is going to almost feel like they're being like interrogated. And it's going to not build rapport very well. They're going to feel like they're getting called from a call center. And again, it's going to come off more cold call-y rather than being neighborly, right? So That is one thing that I'm taking away from this. And then, of course, like I said, he's not doesn't sound like he's going to be a very motivated lead or somebody that we're going to be able to work with. But I like how she's handling this call so far. So let's see. Now she's getting into the asking price. So she kind of got the motivation and the timeline both, in one question. He said that he's not really interested in selling, but if he was going to sell, it would be because he wants to diversify his assets. And he also said it's not going to be for a while, right? If she didn't get that timeline from him, then another question to ask would be, so when ideally are you looking to be done with this property, have your funds, or say something like, so we can typically close pretty quickly, usually in like as little as 3 or 4 weeks. Would that timeline work for you, or is there something that would keep you from selling that quickly, right? So we can kind of get an idea of how quickly they want to sell the property. But obviously this guy doesn't have much motivation and his timeline is pretty far out, but she's handling the call well. She's got the condition, she's got the motivation, and she's got the timeline. Now it sounds like she's getting into the asking price. So let's take a listen.
No.
No, maybe a price range.
No. Anyone wanting to make an
Okay.
offer typically can make the first offer.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So if we can match your numbers, do you have like maybe a timeline when to sell, or depending on the offer, or any time will do?
Correct.
Okay. All right. I think I have all the information that I need for now. I'll talk to my business partner and we'll run numbers and we'll call you back with a number that might work for you and you can decide from there. Is this the best number for a call back, Mr. Payne?
Yes. Correct. Yes.
Okay, got it.
All right.
All righty. Thank you so
Okay.
much for your time
Sure.
and
No
you have a
problem.
good one.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. So as you can hear, he didn't want to give us an asking price, and he said that his timeline had now actually switched. He originally said that he wasn't going to want to sell for a while, and now he's saying, if I get the right offer, I'll sell whenever, right? So, and that's a lot of bad leads. That's what a lot of bad leads say. So this is not a good lead, but she did handle this call really well. As you can see, she went through the 4 pillars qualification. She got the condition of the property. She got the motivation. She got the timeline. You can hear she even went back and asked for the timeline because it wasn't super clear. And the asking price. And if we look at the 4 pillars, okay, the house, he said it was in pretty good shape. Motivation, he doesn't really want to sell, but if he did, it'd be to restructure his portfolio and diversify it. Timeline, whenever he gets the right offer. An asking price, he didn't want to give it, and he said anybody that's interested can make the first offer. I would throw this lead in the trash, but I do really like how she handled this call, and I really like how she ended the call by saying, hey, I think I got everything I need. Let me take a look at this with my partner. I'm going to run some numbers, and I'll get back to you, and we'll take it from there, right? And that's exactly how we handle the calls, and we ask, hey, is this the best number to reach back? Is this the best number to call back on, and is there any specific time that would work better than others, right? But she did really well. She got some information. She followed the 4 pillars of qualification very well. She did active listening. I really appreciate that. A lot of virtual assistants do not actively listen, so she did very well with that. The one thing that I will point out, though, is if you notice, there was a bunch of typing on the keyboards, right? She was taking notes, obviously. And while that's not a huge deal, again, that's going to come off a little bit more like a call center vibe, right? Rather than just your friendly neighborhood home buyer, right? So one thing that I tell our team to do is instead of typing those notes, have a little pen and paper, write them down while you're on the phone with the seller, because they're not going to be able to hear you writing. They'll be able to hear you typing, but they won't be able to hear you writing. So you'll be able to take those notes, and it doesn't, ruin the flow of the conversation and make the homeowner on the other end think they're just typing down everything that I say. They're in a call center, right? Immediately they just sales vibes. We're trying to limit the salesman cold calling vibes as much as possible. So those are a couple of ways to do it. But other than that, it was a great call. I think that if you use that framework of calls with a actual motivated seller, you're going to get some really good information. So I'm going to tell my coaching client that his virtual assistant's doing a really good job opening up those calls, just maybe taking those couple little tweaks, like the not using the full address and not typing while she's talking. Maybe take notes here and ask maybe a little bit more open-ended questions. But other than that, that's a great call. So if she has that exact script not exact script, but if she has that flow of conversation with a qualified or with a motivated homeowner that actually has a problem, she's going to get some really good information and she's going to have a really good conversation. So I'm going to ask him if he's got any good leads that we can listen to that are similar to this, so we can hear how his virtual assistant handles an actual lead. But other than that, I hope this video helped you understand maybe the flow of conversation and how to kind of handle that first call, where again, our biggest priorities is just to make a good first introduction, get off on the right foot, collect some information that's based on the 4 pillars of qualification: the condition, the motivation, the timeline, and the price, and then say, hey, I got everything I need. I appreciate your time. I'm going to look at this. I'm going to run some numbers with my partner, and then I'm going to get back to you, and we'll kind of take it from there, right? That's all that first call needs to be. That's all the first call has to be. You don't have to give them an offer. You don't got to talk about comps. You don't got to do any of that. Just have a good conversation, collect some information, and then let them know you're going to follow up with them in the future to take it from there, right? So hope that helped. As always, I'll see you guys in the next video.